r/Nosleep, posted by Reddit user G_A93. In Mr. Hoffsetters Carnival, you must follow these rules to ride. Part 2. The stilt walkers were grotesque. Imagine, if you will, gray-skinned human bodies, fully dressed in musty tuxedos. The heads poking from the top of the shirts were impaled by what I could only assume were part of the stilts, and though their eyes were moving and chests were filling with oxygen, we could see no life from within them. The undead, marching carelessly through the area, jagged pieces of wood and metal sticking out from the bottom of their stilts, slashing anyone who would dare be in their way. We had enough distance between us and the walkers to think of where to go from here. The Ferris wheel was our only source of cover. This was dangerous territory to be in. Where do we go? Did the rules say anything about a shelter? Fuck, Darla said, seeming a little bit more hopeless than before. That man said, never stick around where the stilt walkers were. We just need to clear the area. Darla paused before turning over to me, eyes red and puffy, tears still streaming down her cheeks. What about Russ? In all the dreadful excitement, I had put the image of Russ's dismembered body out of my mind. The thought of his scream playing over and over. It was maddening. I felt as if I was in a loop dream. Chest to boot. The sound of flesh ripping. The screams. The horror. I was staring at Darla, her lips moving but unable to hear her, only hearing the looping horror that was Russell's demise. Look out! I finally heard, as Darla shoved me with all her strength. Just then, a stilt walker jammed his enormous stilt down right where I was standing. It managed to cut my arm before I was completely out of the way. I got to my feet as fast as I could. Me and Darla began running to the other side of the carnival. In here, I yelled, running into a small tent. Once inside, I held Darla, then checked to see if she was all right. I'm fine, she demanded. The tent was dark. We looked for something to look around with, but came up with nothing. We peeked outside to see if the walkers were still out, and they were, just strolling carelessly. Every once in a while we would hear the crunching of bone and flesh as they stomped around. We assumed it was an employee of the park, or maybe worse, another innocent soul. Just as we were about to pull the tent covers open to do another check, a mime appeared, standing right in front of the tent, an enormous grin plastered on its face. I was behind Darla, so I assume it didn't hear my cowardly wince as it began coming into the tent. Darla looked back at me, stone-faced. Don't show emotion, she whispered. We fell back into the tent, watching this mime perform all its standard gimmicks. The wind blowing his umbrella back, pulling himself on a rope, and yes, even the I'm stuck in a glass box stick. For a moment, we even forgot about the horrors of the park and began clapping after every trick, staying totally emotionless throughout. He began to wind down as his show was coming to an end. He finished pulling out his last batch of tricks when he looked at me, eyes cold, smile now looking more sinister than ever. He pointed his fingers into a gun-like position. He pointed it at his temple, then to the top of the ceiling. Then he seemed to dance around like a cowboy, celebrating a victory in the Old West. And then he pointed his fingers towards me. But something was very off about the way he approached me. It was horrifying. His makeup began to melt off his face. His eyes lost the white in them. Yes, he was becoming more like a creature you'd find in this horrible place. As he stepped closer and closer, my heart rate jumped. He seemed to be cackling like he was at a comedy show, but no laughs came out. Not one sound. He stuck the gun right into the middle of my forehead. He cocked his thumb as to indicate he was ready to pull the trigger. It was the most intense moment of my life up until then. The mime looked into my emotionless eyes, and then smiled. He pulled the finger back away, pretending to shoot everything in the room to no avail. He stuck the fingers in his mouth, and that's when I heard it. Darla gasped in horror, and in an instant, a shot rang out from within the mime's mouth, blowing an enormous hole into the back of its head. "I don't think he'll be doing any more shows tonight," Darla said. I couldn't believe it. She must have been waiting for the right moment, but it was amazing. She had adapted to their rules, even beating them at their own game. We cleared out of the tent. I was still a bit shaken at the last encounter, but at least the stilt walkers had cleared out. At this point, we were lost. Where do we go? Who do we see? Where the fuck is this damn bear? It was all a bit too much, to be honest. I nearly fainted at the million questions running through my brain, until I heard, "Psst, come here." A voice called out unto us. Another clown. This one more bright and colorful. He almost looked like he actually belonged in a normal setting, as normal as a carnival can be. "No, we're not doing this again. Fuck off," Darla screamed, as she turned to me, grabbing my hand. We were about to sprint back towards the Ferris wheel when we saw them, all of them, clowns, coming out of every corner of darkness. "What's the matter, kids?" one of them said. "Are you scared of little old me?" He finished, giggling maniacally. "Is it the nose?" howled another one. Round and round there was nothing but colors. Bow ties and neckties, polka dots and stripes, big red noses and shoes as long as a yardstick, and of course laughing. So much fucking laughing. "What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of?"
"What are you afraid of?"
the clowns chanted. "Is it snakes?" one said, as he melted into a shadow before the shadow dissipated into hundreds of slithering snakes. "How about zombies?" The clown laughed heartily, belly jiggling from every giggle, until slabs of meat fell off him, skin ripping from his face, exposing his skull and innards, still laughing as he walked towards us, now sounding more guttural. I felt like crying. I looked over at Darla, and she seemed to share that sentiment. And just then I noticed the clown off to the left of the tent we just left. There was something about his demeanor. He was calm. As a matter of fact, he was taking drags off a cigarette and looking at his watch. Not a care in the world, almost as if he was bored with his life at Mr. Hoffsetters Carnival. I grabbed Darla by the arm and dragged her over to him, nearly escaping the all-too-zombified clown. "Lenny!" I shouted. The clown looked up from his cigarette, almost surprised to see me talking to him by name. Still, he kept his cool demeanor. "What the hell you want, kid?" he said, looking back at his watch, taking another drag. His voice was like that of a mob boss in the Colombo crime family. We were hoping... Well, we were... I fumbled, not realizing the anger building on this clown's face. What is it?" Lenny bellowed out ferociously, his face looking almost cartoonish in how wide and evil-looking it turned, as he scolded my poor excuse for a conversation. "We need help. These clowns, this carnival, please, we just want to get home," Darla yelled, a single tear running down her face before she slipped it off with her finger. Lenny looked at us with anger, and then pity. "What clowns, kid?" he said calmly, as he ashed his cigarette. When we looked back behind, they were all gone. All of them, almost as if all the clowns shoved into a mini bug and headed for Who the Fuck Caresville. We both stood there in the stunned silence of the warm summer night. "Hey kid, you got a lot of shit to get through still. Now I'll tell you, these clowns, A bunch of pussies here. Well, I'll tell you. These clowns are not performers at all, see? All a bunch of punks who gave up an illustrious clowny career to be, shadow monsters. Yeah, that's it. Shadow monsters. They ain't nothing, kid. Just flash a light, and they should shit their costumes. Lenny stood tall now, adjusting his hair and bow. Good luck, kid. Ain't a lot of people who make it, but you seem resourceful. I'm sure you'll be just fine, he said, in the nicest tone, before he, essentially, moved us aside. Besides, clowns and such ain't gonna do nothing to nobody. They full of shit. Now that one, as he pointed behind us, that one there, yeesh. Good luck, kid, he said, as he dissipated into the carnival attractions. I don't know how to describe it, but it wasn't like the shadow clowns that melt into the darkness. He just became one with the carnival tent. And that's when we heard her. Please, I'm lost. Can you help me find my mommy and daddy?